Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Rise to Your Peak podcast. I am here today with Kayla and Tyler from Valkyrie Fit. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys. Just to give a little insight about the two of them, Kayla is an IFBB pro as well as a coach specializing in both bodybuilding and functional medicine. Tyler is a strongman competitor with over 20 years of coaching experience. And together they have formed Valkyrie Fit. How are you guys both doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Awesome.
Um, did I leave anything out of that introduction?
No, no, I don't think so.
Neither of us are really good about talking about ourselves.
Yeah, I'm the same
We
way.
both
I'm
kind
the
of hate doing
same way.
that.
It's always kind of awkward, like giving yourself, credentials or anything like that. Um, well, let's just dive right into it. Your guys' team is a relatively new coaching team. It just started within the last couple months, correct?
Yes. So August 1st would have been our official start of everything.
Okay, cool. How's it been going so far?
It's been going really good. We've been kind of shifting gears from just doing online coaching to having some sort of in-person aspect to it as well.
Oh, cool.
Because I feel like we both feel like that's a really big aspect of how athletes especially can be successful in what they do, because a lot of the training portion is taken out of online coaching, we
Yeah.
felt like. So that was something that we really wanted to change with that.
Yeah, definitely. No, I totally agree. There's only so much you can do from a critique standpoint through like, web online videos.
It's
Mhm.
pretty difficult to imitate what you want somebody to do through a webcam in your office.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. What led to you guys deciding to open Valkyrie Fit? What was that spark?
Well, so I have actually coached. So I've coached on my own before when I first started coaching my own business in 2018. And then I went to a coaching team and I worked with a team for a little bit because I was really struggling on my own to just, well, one, we're in North Dakota. So like finding clients here is few and far
Yeah.
between.
Yeah,
So, and being online is very hard as it is too, because you basically have to be a social media content creator too.
you
And
do.
that is not either one of our fortes either. So I was just having a really hard time, and I got on with a coaching team, learned a lot. And this entire time that I was going through all of that, we've known each other since 2017.
Correct.
And he every single time was like, "You're gonna be really good at this." He's like, "You need to just go all in on yourself." And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I just like didn't feel like I could,
Yeah.
but he always believed that I could. So finally, come August, I was like, okay, I feel like I have more of an idea of what I want my coaching business to look like. Like we
Yeah.
started dating in like the last year, so he started putting that more into my head that like you can do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And finally I was like, okay, like let's do it. And so
I was reluctant to coach.
yeah.
Again, it's kind of always worked in the background.
Yeah.
As far as my coaching history goes, it's more 20 years of training and competing, and more so like 5 years of quietly helping other strong men in the background,
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
and power lifters and things of that nature. I grew up in a gym. I mean, where I grew up in the cities, while there was still Gold's gyms there, I
Yeah.
lived 4 miles down the road from one. I used to bike to it every day from the time I was 13 until I left that town. So I
Mhm.
had all the old meatheads and the old philosophies of trainings and got to see the development through my time in the military as well. Kind of change gears as to, more functional style, as well as, the strength necessity required to complete the jobs. So
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean something you touched on, Kayla. I say this to everyone who talks to me about getting into online coaching or interest in, joining my team and stuff. It really is true that online coaching is about 20% coaching, 80% content creation. and being active on social media. And when
Yep.
you really think about that, that is just crazy, you know? And then it makes you really analyze, well, okay, who's the most successful coaches? And it lines up with content creation and stuff like that, not necessarily the most skilled or educated professionals. And you know, there's plenty of super skilled, super educated coaches with big clientele or big followings, but that came from their constant success, not so much their content creation. So it's kind of like two separate things there to differentiate. But it is tough, you know, especially if like if you just want to focus on helping people and being in the gym and you know the programming aspect, the content side of things can be really annoying. And I think that's why so many coaches have either joined a team where it's kind of like being handled or at least assisted with in the background, or yeah, I mean the newest thing is literally coaches having a videography team and marketing strategy team follow them around 24/7 and handle all that jazz for them.
Yep.
And with where the fitness industry is now, it makes sense. You know, if you would have talked about that 5, 10 years ago, people probably would have laughed.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was talking to someone about this the other day. I honestly think that Matt Jansen, and I could be wrong, but from my perspective over the last 10 years, I feel like Matt Jansen was the one who started that. You know, before there was OnlyFans and Patreon, Camp
Yeah.
Jansen's website had this ability for you to pay to follow him around all day and see the day in the life of Matt Jansen back when Dallas McCarver was doing his thing and you know Michaela Aycock. So I felt like that's what really led to this desire of like subscribing to someone else's life and like paying attention to all those details. And from the coach's side, he was the first person to really justify the entire like media crew and marketing crew following him and stuff. At least that's my perspective, you know. He just seemed to be one of those first ones to highlight this demand or interest in that. And then it just kind of catapulted from there. But it's cool to see that you guys are still very hands-on in your coaching. It's not just online. It's a lot of in-person training, which is great. Um, so would you say that w- I'll ask each of you individually, what is your target market or focus group that you guys are looking to reach and help?
You can go first.
Well, I would say so. I work with functional health clients as well. So I have lots of people with gut issues. So like as far as H. pylori, SIBO, IBS issues, things like that.
Yeah,
And those ones are a lot easier to work with online because the training aspect, we pull back on training most of the
yeah.
time.
Least of
So
our
this is
concern.
Yep. So this is like general lifestyle stuff too that we work on.
Yeah,
And then as far as like hormonal issues, like menopausal cases, I work with like girls coming off of birth control, things like that.
yeah.
So any kind of like hormonal issues too that are going on. It's like lots of the women, I usually just work with them. He's like has no idea about any of that stuff.
Sure.
So that's just basically like my wheelhouse. And then of course like athletes. So powerlifting, bodybuilding. I really, especially with my athletes, I really want to make sure that we're getting lab work done and we're making sure that they are healthy to compete and post competition because competing can really take a toll on your body. And
Totally.
that's like what happened to me in 2020. I basically had like menopausal levels of sex hormones. So it was like the worst thing I ever experienced, like worse than any prep I've ever gone through. So I just was like,
Wow.
I don't want to deal with that again or have any of my athletes go through that because there was just
Yeah.
a lot I didn't know and stuff. So I learned a lot, took a lot of courses, classes, certifications, what have you,
Yeah.
about functional health. And I'm still learning all the time, of course, but so that's mainly my focus. So kind of across the board, but
Yep.
I'd say we're about 50-50 with athletes and functional health right now too.
Gotcha.
So that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
I
mean,
guess,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Tyler. Sorry.
No, you, by all means, you go first.
Oh, I was just gonna say, in the modern day, we're seeing more and more people are dysfunctional. And the question then comes, well, are more and more people dysfunctional, or are we just getting more educated to where we notice it? It's probably a little bit of both. I
Yeah.
mean, food quality in America is getting worse and worse.
Hmm.
Toxic overload is getting worse and worse. Then you have just the environment of our country and social media and all these stressors hammering us, 24/7. And it's that accumulation that leads to dysfunction. And, you know, women, let's be honest, are just less tolerable to stressors than men. I truly believe women are mentally tougher than men, but when
Hmm.
it comes to like physiology and actual handling loads of stress, men take the cake. And
Yeah.
so, of course, we're going to see more dysfunctional women than men, but we're seeing a lot of dysfunctional men too.
Hmm.
And it's great that you guys have that balance, the understanding of both. You both are intense athletes, so you understand the need to push the body to see progress, but you also understand, like, well, if the body's not responding, we don't just keep pushing. We need to pay attention to these markers on labs, pay attention to their biofeedback, and not just dig the hole deeper and deeper,
Hmm.
or catch it before you even start a prep, and fix the problem ahead of time. That's ideal. Might not be ideal for the client's timeline, but we know that that's what's going to lead to the most successful prep. I think a big thing that people forget is, everyone thinks when we harp on health, they're thinking longevity. And they're like, oh, I really appreciate that they're looking at my long-term health. We're also thinking about performance, dude. A healthy body responds better. So, yeah, long term, but I want you to look good and perform well right now. And that means being healthy too. And I think a lot of people still don't gauge that short end fix too. You know what I mean? It's not just long term. It's right now.
Right. Exactly.
No, I think that's a good point too. And I wanted to touch on as well, like women, it seems to be a little more prevalent nowadays that we're seeing dysfunctional women in the sense of hormones and stuff like that. But I
Yeah.
think to go back to what you said about men, I think a lot of us are just too ignorant or too stubborn to realize what's going on, right? Where we just feel tired. Wow,
Yeah.
fuck, I'll have another monster. I'll have another cup of
Yeah.
coffee, or you know what I mean? And we'll just keep pushing on until you finally hit that brick wall where your hair's falling out and you have no drive anymore and you're wondering what the hell happened and you're only 33 years old.
Totally. Totally. And I mean, let's be honest. Most of the advice we've gotten as athletes over the past 20 to 30 years turns out wasn't that good of advice. The Mamba
Yep.
mentality, the team no sleep, all this
Hmm.
stuff that isn't going to lead to optimal performance. And people have to remember that being a great NBA basketball player is way different than being a great bodybuilder.
Mhm.
Way
So
different.
different.
They
Hmm.
can drink, they can party. Most of their success is based on raw genetic skill. And sure, they have to work on things to improve that skill, but at the end of the day, LeBron is LeBron, Kobe is Kobe, you
Yeah.
know? Nothing's changing that.
Right.
Whereas every single person who's successful in bodybuilding, they have great genetics and stuff, but they still have to check off tons of boxes to be successful, and continue to be successful. And I think so many people get caught up in the motivational type of stuff, and almost, especially with men, feel guilty about taking rest days, guilty about this idea of I'm being lazy or I'm not pushing hard enough.
Yep.
But we have to remember that, like, being the best possible athlete means you also listen to your body. A good race car driver doesn't ignore the lights popping up on the dash. He speaks to his team and he pit stops.
Yep.
Why are we so differently in our discussion, you know? And it's because we've kind of been manipulated, in my opinion. Nowadays, I'd say in the last 3 years, 4 years, honestly, probably since 2020, there has been this new appreciation to recovery and rest days and health optimization, but it's still nuanced, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Sure.
And what something that we've talked about to go along with that point of the recovery aspect is, like, I've definitely felt that where like the recovery has come into more of importance of athletes, but maybe sometimes even a little too much,
Hmm.
where I feel like that kind of happened to me where I was like on, we've talked about it as like a pendulum. It's like I was on the end of like overstressed, overworked, less sleep, not eating enough, all that caused this. And then I went too far to the other side of like, oh, I need to rest more. I need to do this more. I need to do this more. Where now I had to kind of come back to the middle of like, I had to like kind of like relearn how to like train my ass off
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
You know, because I was too afraid of like, well, what if my cortisol goes down again? What if
right,
my cortisol goes to crap and like I can't compete anymore? So
right.
like
Yeah,
he
to
kind of
see you
had to
kind of
like
babying
help
yourself.
me get back and be like, hey, you're gonna be just fine, Kayla. Like we know what to do now. And I was like, oh,
You
okay.
know what it feels
You
like when
know,
it's coming. You don't need to be
yeah.
afraid of it. You just need to identify the markers as they're coming.
Hmm.
100%. Absolutely. We're not saying that you can never train hard again or never
Right.
take PEDs again or never compete again. We're saying listen to your fucking body, dude, and like
Hmm.
pay attention to feedback. Like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Stop being insane, you know?
Yep.
That's the biggest thing. And we do have to be careful as coaches who truly believe in health and you know push the health aspects. We have to be careful that we don't turn everyone into these fragile beings who aren't willing to train hard. it
Yep.
Oh yeah.
is a slippery slope. They develop
Hmm.
fears of food, they develop fears of training, fears of this, fears of that, and they're just missing a lot of context, I think.
They develop it quickly, and I think part of that, I'll put the blame on social media and
Hmm.
influencing and stuff like that, where it's, I mean, especially the younger generation. I hate that I can say that now, but the younger generation of lifters that we see in the gym. I mean, every 2 weeks they have a new program that they're doing. Oh, now I'm a fucking power builder, or now I'm a hybrid athlete, and I've got so many gains in two. Listen, you're fucking 18. You're gonna get gains no matter what you do,
Yeah,
right? Like you're just following the next fad,
right.
and that you're just going to drive yourself into a hole. But to that same context, if we tell people to be scared of something because of that acceptance that I think they're already preconditioned to through following all these people on social media, that
Yeah,
we've seen it with specifically one of our athletes where there's a large fear factor of going hypo, or not getting enough food, and that recovery aspect where that pendulum has swung too far to
yeah,
you get a little shaky and now you're worried that you're falling apart. Well, no, you
yeah,
just had a good training session, and that shit hurts.
right, right. Yeah, you're gonna we want to deplete glycogen. That means you actually had a good workout. Like, come on, guys. You
Exactly.
know, I think the problem with social, well, there's so many problems with social media. One of the problems with social
Let's count the
media,
ways.
yeah, is it's the fact that everything's so short. And so
Yes.
what they could be saying could have tons of validity, but it's so out of context that it's
Yep.
not actually helping someone. And I think that's where a lot of the fears come from, is like
Sure.
they heard this little blip of 10 seconds that could be true for some people and then just kind of ran with it. The way I always explain it to people, if we are doing like a health phase or something, is like, say you broke your foot and the doctor says, okay, no running for 10 weeks. It doesn't mean you can never run again. It means you need to do what's necessary to let that foot heal and then slowly integrate yourself, back into normalcy and training. It's kind of the same idea with health phases. We're doing what we can to bring down the inflammation, bring down the burden or stress, but once the problem is addressed, you shouldn't be so fragile. You should be able to find that sweet spot, like you said, Tyler. Like listen to your fucking body. Like it tells you way before dysfunction happens, you will start getting warning signs like
Yep.
skin issues, hair issues, sleep issues, lack of energy, zero sex drive. You're on a ton of gear and you have no sex drive. That should be a red flag, people, whether
Right.
you're a guy or a girl. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like we're just so used to scapegoating that or creating some idea in our head. Oh, it's because I'm getting older, you know, oh, it's because of
Right.
this. But it's been happening for a long time. And it oftentimes takes coaches like us to be like, hey, no, that's not normal. We need to, you know, dive into this a bit more.
Right. Well, and I think too, to that same factor of not being fearful, we're so adaptive as human beings, right? So anytime you go through that experience, you ought to be more resilient coming out of it. I
You
mean,
would
just
assume.
mechanically, you ought to be more resilient.
Yeah, you would assume. Yeah, 100%. Um, moving into the next point, which is kind of similar here. What is, and for each of you, what is something you guys would like to see change in the fitness, bodybuilding, online coaching industry? And what are things that you really love that you don't want to see change?
I think, and I'll start on this one because I'm pretty heated on this topic
It's
from
like
time to
it's
time.
gotta go.
It's I think it's a pain in the ass how much we put into credentialism
Yeah,
in the aspect of I went to a 4-week course, I'm a certified trainer.
sure.
Now I know more than you, although I work at Joe Schmo gym for, pennies on the dollar for my training. I bring a better value than you do because I have this piece of paper.
Sure.
Not to take away from the fact that education is very important when it comes to this, especially with what we do in handling people, their health, their hormones, all of the above. But to the same token, I think what we've done with that credentialism, and then as you said, in that short turnaround of social media, right, the little blips of information, is we've kind of idolized all of these pieces of paper versus taking the people who have the actual experience,
Yeah,
that have gone through the work, that have gone through the mess, have dug themselves out of a hole, right? And have the applied concepts proven and tried with other clients, right? I would love to
100%
see
agree.
more client testimonials of real coaches, not just by night coaches.
100% agree. I think application is equally, if not more important than formal education.
Sure.
It rides a fine line. And I think that this comes from trends over time. You know, again, looking back at, let's just say 20, 30 years ago in the bodybuilding world, most of the information was from forums coming from big name coaches, big name competitors who, quite frankly, didn't have a lot of education. They
Right.
had a lot of firsthand anecdotal information to share, but it wasn't like peer reviewed scientific knowledge. It was just anecdotal. And
Yep.
that was very useful. And then we kind of realized, oh, well, they're wrong about a few things. Now we're only going to trust scientists and doctors. It's extremes, you know. It's
Very.
going from extremes. We need to recognize, okay, who got that education, then got into the trenches for 5 to 10 years and found that balance of what's on paper versus what human beings are actually showing in their response. And
Yep.
that's few and far between, I think.
Right. And we were having this discussion just the other day of the difference between the information that was available from when I started lifting 20 years ago. I mean, you just looked at the next biggest dude in the gym and you're
Right.
like, hey, how the fuck did you do that?
Right.
Like, teach me,
Yeah,
right? Or you
exactly.
get muscle and fitness magazines and you'd clip out the pre-clipped BS workouts that were in there, right?
That's right.
And then it
That's
was
right.
up to you and your journal to see what actually worked for you and retain that information, and through various amounts of notebooks
Yep.
funnel down to an actual applicable workout for you to develop what you wanted to develop in that time.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah,
think
every human
that
body responds differently.
exactly. And I think that trial and tribulation of gaining information is far more important and valuable because you have the practice of then applying the knowledge
Mm.
as well.
I definitely agree with that. And I think even just through my own experience, but I'll speak openly about coaches in general. If you've worked with 500 clients, you've experienced a lot and you probably have a good idea of what to do in situations of troubleshooting and stuff like that. You may not know exactly why something works because you haven't looked into the scientific mechanisms of action, but you
Sure.
know it works and you're confident that similar people going through similar issues, this is going to help, you know? And so it's that balancing act.
Absolutely.
I've rarely had a client come to me and be like, "Show me peer-reviewed studies of what you're recommending." You know, like, get out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I've definitely had clients that have asked, especially my functional ones, just because most of the time they want to know why
Yes.
what's happening to them is happening.
Yes.
And sometimes we don't know the exact root cause, and that's what we're trying to figure out a lot of
Yeah.
times, and why sometimes it can take longer to fix issues. But so I try to do my best to send them some sort of like reading material or
Yeah.
something to kind of back up like what we're doing,
Yeah.
because that can be really hard. And a lot of times too, so what I think is, what was the question again? What's changing and what would you want to stay the same?
Yeah. What would you like to see change ideally, and
Okay.
what do you love that ideally you wouldn't want to see change?
I think the biggest thing for me that's going to change, or that should change, is that people are going to have more of like a healthcare team
Mm,
instead of like just one doctor that they go see.
mhm.
Because like there's been many, many times I've had clients ask, like, can I just get the GI map from my doctor? And I'm like, go ahead and ask them if you can. And then most of the time doctors come back, what's a GI map?
Right.
And they want to go scope them. And I'm like, they can maybe see a little bit of stuff in there, but like they're not going to get everything. And
Right.
and to that token, like GI maps don't just like do everything either by any
Of
means, but
course.
it's just one tool. But that's something that I think would be a really good change to see, is people having a healthcare team and having healthcare insurance like cover more things than just the necessities of
Mhm.
like what big pharma, but
Yeah.
it's big pharma runs the country, so is that ever going to change really?
It's a good point. There's certain people trying to make that movement happen. There was a meeting with Congress a week ago talking about our food quality and
Mhm.
the toxic overload happening to
Mhm.
every single American, because of how corrupt the FDA
Yep.
and NIH and everything is.
Mhm.
Um, I think you brought up a great point too, Kayla. Specifically with functional cases, we do typically one get asked for more information and feel an overall obligation to provide more information. But I think a lot of that comes from the fact that they've never gotten information from their doctor. So the Western medicine professionals who were supposed to be trusting with our health have either misled us or just not helped us for 5+ years. Now you have a bodybuilding coach sharing all this information, making sense. And it's like, well, why the fuck didn't my doctor tell me this? You know what I mean? Why is a bodybuilding coach so educated on this? And I think that's a new place for people in the past 4 years. I think, we can all agree that the trust in our medical system has shifted in the
Sure.
past 4 years. But something that I've also realized too, personally coaching people, is if you can show them or explain to them the why, they're much more likely to follow something versus just like because I said so. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
They're that much more likely to fully dive into it if they understand, like, if I do X, Y, and Z, it's going to lead to this, and this is why, you know? Um, but no, I also agree about, the healthcare and financial system. One thing that we do at Ryze at the clinic to try to help with this is we accept HSA or FSA payments for anything: blood work, functional medicine services, GI maps, HRT, peptides, you name it, just to try to soften that financial blow on people, because insurance companies just, they're not really trying to help,
Mhm.
in the grand scheme. They're working with Western medicine, um, and they're all kind of benefiting in the background while we don't necessarily fully benefit. So no,
Certainly.
I fully agree with you on those.
It's hard because coaching nowadays is like a luxury
Mm,
service, and it's sad because it should be something that's made available to everybody because
Yeah.
it can help anybody, you know, having somebody help you learn about nutrition. Like we're supposed to have nutrition courses in school, but you don't learn jack shit from that anymore. You know,
No.
like your basics, that's about it. Get your
Yeah.
fruits, your vegetables, you know, I don't even know what the food pyramid looks like anymore, but
It's
Yeah. I
upside
mean, I was just going to say, it turns out
down.
all that education was so wrong. It
Yeah,
was like
exactly.
80% processed carbohydrates. That was the that was the food pyramid. How freaking
who was in
insane.
charge of establishing the food pyramid for schools? It was the USDA and the FDA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was
So
entirely
it's
based on agronomists and
yeah,
agriculture.
they all it was all a design system, you
Mhm.
know? And unfortunately we're still falling victim to it. I going on that same discussion of this movement that's happened with Congress, some of the people in that movement have also tried to enhance HSA and FSA to cover gym memberships, to cover personal training, to even cover organic food from like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. So I think that's great. Who knows if it's actually going to get approved
Right.
or if it's going to go anywhere, but at least I'll say at least we have people with big enough voices to reach Congress.
Certainly.
Oh
It's a
yeah.
step in the right direction, you know?
Mhm.
Far further than we've ever had before.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, what are areas that you both kind of see in your own worlds where you see clients struggle the most? What's the weak point for each of your clients?
Being that I specifically focus on the training aspect and in person and programming, I think a lot of people I don't know who you fault for this necessarily, but understanding what failure is,
Mm,
right? A lot of what we see, and I see it not just from clients, but even go on YouTube and watch some of these training videos. They start struggling with the rep and they call it a partial and call it good, and that was RPE 10. Fucking face isn't even red, and I don't see any sweat coming out of you. It doesn't
yeah,
look
they
like
didn't
that was
even
all that
struggle.
hard,
Yeah.
right? But also understanding the balance between when to hit failure and when not to,
Mm.
right? You tend to see two extremes, and I was horrible about it when I was younger. I mean, God, when I was in high school, I would train twice a day.
Oh
I
yeah.
would get up and lift. I would do wrestling practice and then I would lift after wrestling. I could because I was 18 years old, 16, 17, whatever, right? I could eat anything and nothing would phase me. But
Yeah.
you can't do that as you get older and you can't always go balls to the walls and run your head into the ground. So
Right.
I
A
think there's
2 hour
just
chest day just isn't going to be that beneficial.
no, it
Mm.
really isn't. You've lost anything after about an hour and a half,
Right.
depending on your rest periods. Yeah, it'd be pretty hard to make a 2 hour chest day. And I pride myself on having pretty hard workouts, but I don't think I could make a chest day in the bodybuilding sense last 2 hours.
Right. Well, I
You know,
think you brought up a good point too, because I think when I hear about long workouts, whether that's including cardio or not, if you're in the gym for, more than 90 minutes, how are you pushing till failure? Because you should have failed a long time ago, dude. Like,
yep,
I think you're right. We're not grasping what failure means because
right.
that means the workout's basically done,
Mhm.
you know? Your
Yep.
CNS is demolished, your muscles are demolished. So, what do you think? Do you think people are scared of failure? Do you think people don't don't have enough of a pain tolerance? What do you think it is?
I think it's a combination of both, and I think it's just not understanding. I mean, you have to think from when I assume you're close to my age. When we were younger, all we did was run outside all day long.
Yeah,
We ran and we moved nonstop, where today people are just sedentary and that's the normal.
yeah,
So anytime you climb a flight of stairs and your legs start burning, well, holy shit, I just made you do hack squats for 3 sets of 10. Like, yeah, that
yeah,
probably feels like failure to you, but you haven't truly experienced your muscles turning off,
yeah. True
right? And
mechanical
just
failure.
yeah, not actually identifying what that threshold is. I think people's just perception of what their threshold versus what they're actually capable of is vastly different. And that's what you can't necessarily coach through online. You have to physically be there to touch and help and show, right? And kind of lead by example.
Yeah, I mean, being in person, you can definitely show someone that they got 2 more reps in the tank. You
Absolutely.
can't force that on a webcam, you know?
No.
They'll just
What am I
quit.
going to sit here and berate you? Like, what is that going to benefit?
Right.
You know, I wouldn't berate you in the gym. I would just tell you, you got fucking two more. I know you do. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right. And it's hard to say no when your coach or your friend or anybody is there helping you.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to impress to some extent. Right.
Well,
And that's
yeah,
in the
nobody
next
wants to
gear.
just accept that they're a fucking pussy and quit, you know? Having that, whether guy or girl, if
Yeah.
someone's monitoring my hack squat, I ain't gonna back out. I'm gonna keep going, you know? So it's accountability, but it's like pressure. You know,
Hmm.
you're applying the pressure of like, don't quit on me, you know, and keep going.
And we've seen that so much. I mean, I've done a few training sessions now with a few of our female bodybuilders, and they just want to schedule more. They love it.
Mhm.
I mean, they couldn't believe the best connection, best pump, you know, best feeling they've ever had walking out of a gym. But and we fucking worked hard.
Yeah.
You know, we were all sweating by the end of it.
Yeah,
So
I mean that's huge. Do you guys talk about that a lot? Like do you guys have testimonials of people who work in person versus remote?
we're working on compiling it. It's been a bit of a task to kind of get everything together at once as I still work my day job.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
because I'm really horrible at sitting still as it is. Um, I'm usually up moving around while I
Yeah.
do my work and all that stuff. So we're trying to get everybody together. We have group pages for our athletes and our clients, and you know people post on there, and we're going to start working a compilation of all of those testimonials and start using that as, I don't know if you want to call it advertisement necessarily, but you know let it
Getting the
speak for
word out.
itself. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And they post a lot about like their own training and stuff and tag us, which is awesome. Like we obviously welcome that, but like we
Yeah.
don't specifically ask like, can you post something this week? Like, can you
Sure.
post something? Like we want it to be very organic because like
Mhm.
we just want people to enjoy it, you know,
Of course.
and you know, I think pushing people, you know, there's a lot of talk about this like get outside of your comfort zone, blah blah blah, but like even on the functional side of things, people are scared to be uncomfortable or scared of the unknown. And that's where like the training to
That's for
failure
damn
part is
sure.
like, what if I fail? What if I throw up? What if, you know, this or that? And like on the functional side too, wait, you want me to eat more food? But I've been trying to diet for the last 6 years and I've lost 5 pounds. Actually, I've probably gained more weight than what I've lost. But you want me to eat more food? Like, really? You want me to rest?
Right.
That's really hard for some people to accept too. And it's
Yeah.
like that one.
Was me.
So
No, I totally agree. And you know, going back to not to keep referencing Jansen, but I mean, we all know the old saying, do the hard stuff. That
Yeah.
was like an official bodybuilding saying for like a year and a
mhm.
half, you know. What people don't realize is for a lot of us, the hard stuff isn't training. You know, you love training. It's not hard to do what you love. So those 2 hours out of 24 hours of the day aren't the hard stuff. The sleep, the diet, you know, checking off all the other boxes, that's technically the hard stuff. And I have that
Absolutely.
conversation a lot with athletes who need to go into a health phase.
Yep.
They love prep. They love, you know, blasting PEDs, getting leaner every week, posting on social media, having their, you know, they're suffering through cardio. They love that. Um, but that's not the hard stuff for them. They need to do what they don't love, you know. And for some people, that is training. Tyler, you obviously work with people who need to learn how to train harder. And so it's kind of the
Certainly.
opposite. We run into both. Everyone needs to better analyze what's hard for them and accept that they need to do their definition of the hard stuff, not what society considers hard work, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But who holds you accountable?
Right.
Exactly. Do you have a friend that's doing it with you? More often not,
Not, yeah.
right?
It's a solo sport.
Exactly. That's why people like us exist, to help those. That's why you do your check-ins. That's why you do the shit that you don't want to. I'm that guy. I hate the rest, the recovery. It is my least favorite thing in the world. I mean, I came from traveling all year long last year, working on the road. I was eating 1,100
Yeah.
calories a day. I was installing, windmills, wind
Oh, okay.
turbines, stuff like that. I was plowing in power lines for that. And when I got off the road, she's like, okay, well, you're going through a flush and you're going to eat freaking 6 times a day. I used to eat a sandwich a day when I was on the road, and that was, you know what I mean? Like that was
Wow.
it. You're in the middle of nowhere. The nearest gas station's 2 hours away. I just got adjusted to, Monsters, Copenhagen, and a sandwich every day. You know what I
The
mean?
epitome of health.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up blue collar, a man's
Yeah.
man, so to speak, and
Yeah.
that's kind of the life that I led as well as training. I mean, even when I competed in strongman, I can't say I was the pinnacle athlete. I
Sure.
was honestly a really shitty client. Um, I mean, I slept 3.5 hours a night.
Wow.
Yeah, my daughters were just born at the height of my career, and I was managing car dealerships on top of it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was coaching him through that. And
I
yeah.
bet that
So
was
he was
fun.
my client at that time. And every week, how much sleep did you get? 3 hours? I'm like, you need more sleep. You need more sleep every single week, and just didn't work. And even through that meet prep, so that was his second meet prep. And he was like, well, I want to get down to 220. And he told me it was like 260.
I told you I was 280 and I was like 305. I
Yeah.
had just been competing at super heavyweight and I couldn't do the food anymore, man. Like I was waking up grilling 3 pounds of burger every other morning,
Wow.
waking up in the middle of the night to eat meals, and I'm like, I'm just not going to do this anymore. She's like, well, I don't think you should cut. I was like, I'll give you two options. You can help me or I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it.
All right, well, at least let me help you so you don't kill yourself.
Yeah. Seriously.
So yeah.
So I can say from experience the difference from dropping that part of your ego,
Yep.
right? And that's really what it was. It was the man's man, the growing up in the you don't need sleep, you just need more work. All that kind of stuff is entirely what I grew up in. And then plus going into the military, we're not exactly
Oh,
healthy people.
no.
Oh my God, I was terrible.
Yeah.
At my best cardio state, I should not have been. I mean, at some point, everybody smokes in their military career.
Yeah.
You
I
know what I
imagine.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, but I could do it because I was young, and that just further proved to me that I was bulletproof right up until I wasn't.
Right.
And eventually did run myself into the ground, and somebody here put me back together. But yeah, it's so true, the importance of that health phase to make a longer story longer, to actually pay attention to that stuff and not buy into you can conquer anything without sleep and without health and without rest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like it works until it doesn't. And I've said that fucking for probably 6 years in the bodybuilding world. Because you get a new client and they're like, well, I did 800 calories last year and I looked great. Yeah, and now you're here. So it didn't work so great because now you're fucked, you know?
Yep.
It works until it doesn't. And I've been there too. The education I've developed has been mainly due to my own dysfunction and the place that I've been in.
Same.
I think we all, most of the people who are truly passionate about certain things have their own story and experience to tell, you know?
Mhm.
Certainly.
Mhm. Yep. And I feel bad because that's like a lot of my functional women, or even like peri and post menopausal women, they're like, well, I've been feeling this way for X amount of years and years and years and years, and this is just my normal now. And it's like, okay, well, we can fix it, but it's not going to be done in a 12-week cycle. Like
Right.
this is going to be like a year to 2 years of like undoing,
Yeah.
because you can't just it's the same thing as like eating healthy. You're not going to get fit eating one healthy meal,
Right.
and the same goes for that. Is like you're not going to get fixed a year's worth of issues that were happening in 3 months.
Yeah.
Like it's a whole lifestyle change.
It's like that. Did you guys ever see that meme with Seth Rogen where he's eating an apple and it's like how I feel after eating one healthy meal and expecting like everything to turn around?
Yeah.
That's it, we always have to remind people you didn't get into this place overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight. And whether we're talking about someone who needs to shed 45 pounds for the stage, or someone who needs to rehabilitate an injury, or somebody who has functional health issues, it's a snowball effect that now needs to be reversed. And I
Yep.
get that impacts your dream timeline of things, but that it is what it is, and we can't do anything about that.
Right.
And I think another big issue that kind of connects with everything we've talked about here is differentiating rational decisions from emotional decisions. We're all so emotionally tied to foods, to prep, to to deadlines that like we're not even capable of making rational decisions. It's just like, no, I need this. And oftentimes we're the ones having to talk them out of it and try to have some rational discussions.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest thing is telling somebody that they're not ready to do a prep, and
Totally.
trying to help them understand why.
And I mean, I think they need to realize how much that's coming from a place of care, because I'd love to take your money and I'd love to have a new client that I can post about and say, look how peeled his glutes are and stuff. But at the same time, I just don't see this going well because of the feedback we're seeing. So,
Right.
yeah, let's address it now and not set ourselves up for failure. And
Mm-hmm.
those hard talks always come from a place of care.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And setting the expectation, because it's like we have a lot of first time competitors too, like a lot of young, for like early 20s, like first time competitors and stuff. And everyone wants to win their first show and stuff like that. But like that's not the case for
Right.
like 95% of
Oh,
competitors who are like also the 1% of the population that does this. So like
yeah.
it's very, very small. And like, of course, on Instagram and social media, you see all those people that like, oh, they won their first show, they went to a national show, they won the overall, they turned pro right away.
Yeah.
Now they're going to the Olympia in like 3 to
Right.
5 shows. And it's
Right.
like, that's not the case for like most people though.
No.
But that's what they expect. And it's
Yeah.
like, so having those conversations of like, hey, like this is your first show, you might not be as peeled as you want to be or as muscular as you want to be, but that's part of the progress and part of the game of bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole point of it. If it
Yeah.
was that easy, what fun would it be?
Yep.
Exactly. My very first years of competing was before Instagram and social media really took off. Facebook was around, but we barely even had camera phones back then. And I was so ignorant to how good other people looked. And honestly, in my opinion, that made bodybuilding way more enjoyable. As
Mhm.
soon as Instagram started showing me who I was going to be up against, and I saw like an 18-year-old kid shoulder pressing 140-pound dumbbells, I'm like, all right, I give the fuck up. Like, if this is who I'm going against, I'm never going to be successful. And I feel
Mhm.
like that really destroyed a lot of people's mentality and their joy, their potential joy of competing, because
Mhm.
then it was just like, "Oh, I have to be this good.
Yep. Yep. And I can attest to that too, because when I started bodybuilding, I started in 2015. So I was 20 years old. So like
Wow, you were
again,
pretty young.
yeah, and I coached myself. So I had just started getting into bodybuilding. I had heard about it. I was like, this sounds like fun. I was a gymnast and like fresh in college. And I was like, well, I'm not doing gymnastics anymore. I need something else to do. Found weightlifting and bodybuilding. I was like, okay, cool. That sounds like a fun challenge. And I had never been to a show, had no idea what I was doing. I just kind of did it myself. And I showed up and I wasn't lean enough, but I still had fun. And I got there and I was like, oh, like this is what people look like. And it was a natural show too. So
Yeah.
like, you know, and what kept me going was a judge came up to me at the end and he was like, hey, if you got leaner, he's like, you'd be dangerous. And I was like, so the little competitiveness in me was like, all right, like watch me,
Yeah.
and then the next year I came back and I won the whole show,
That's awesome.
began coaching myself. And then I went to NPC, won 2 overalls there by myself. And then when I went to nationals, I got my ass kicked. And so it was like win, win, win. And then you kind of get knocked back down,
Yeah.
like kind of that humble pie. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well now I know what it felt like to lose. And I was like, well, I don't want to lose. Like I got to get this pro card.
Right.
And took 3 years off, came back, finally had a coach, got my pro card after 4 shows that year. And then took another couple of years off coming into my pro debut, same thing, like people hyping you up. You're going to do great. You're going to do great. And I just wasn't feeling it that well. We got to the show and I was like, yeah, like this ain't going to be good, because you see yourself next to those people. And then I got last call outs. And so now I'm like, that didn't feel good, you know? So having a little bit of that come back to reality sometimes, and losing is like good for you, I think. You know,
Oh,
not everyone's going to go in and just win
100%.
every show that they do. Like what fun is that?
Yeah, and you don't learn anything from it. You don't learn from a win. You learn from a
Right.
loss. You know what I
Right.
mean? If you're winning every show, why would you listen to constructive criticism? Why would you even let someone coach you? You know,
Yeah.
you're basically like, dude, I got this. You know what I mean? A false sense of confidence and a bad mindset, honestly. But I do think that not enough people, still to this day, not enough people recognize the vast difference between national and pro.
Oh
Like
Okay.
yeah.
we kind of assume that national level people are right about there. Nah, like the first time I took a client to a pro show, I was like, holy fuck. Like everything just shut down, you know, like
Yep.
any confidence that we were going to crush it, I was just like, well, I hope we get second call out, you know, like that was what I was actually crossing my fingers for, was second call out, because these people were so insane backstage, seeing their glutes and everything in person.
Yep.
It was just like, damn, this is just such a wake up call.
Hmm.
I think too that people don't recognize how much how difficult it is on the judges and how difficult it is to be a first time pro competitor and be like a kind of a face in the crowd that's not known or recognized.
Yep.
Um, I was an NPC judge at one point, and I ended up um, helping out at a bikini pro show one time. I didn't actually judge, but it was kind of like just education for me to sit on the panel and try to judge the same way they did.
You were test judging?
Test judging. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
44 pro bikini girls all
Ooh.
on stage at the same time. Let me tell you, first and foremost, it was impossible to read numbers. And as I'm trying to write things down, they already have first call out picked. And I'm like looking down the aisle, like, how did you motherfuckers just pick numbers? Because I can't see any of those women. And
Right.
that just goes to show you that they already know, like they already have some fan favorites, and they have some standout amazing people that they were, you know, really focused on that day.
Yep.
And that really opened my eyes to the pro league too, when I
Mhm.
was just like, I didn't have a single number written down and they had their first call out picked. And I was like,
Right.
wow, you know?
And that's the
So
thing about bodybuilding, is that it is a subjective sport. And that's where people, like, you can't get butthurt about that, because like you're going against people who maybe have done this multiple times in a row. They're a familiar face, and it's just human nature to go towards a familiar face.
I say
You
the
know,
same thing all the time. I'm so glad you
like,
said that.
yeah. And so it's a little different with like strongman and like powerlifting, because there's at least numbers involved there.
It's quantifiable. I mean, you
Yeah.
either won or you didn't. It
Well,
doesn't
that's
matter
the
what you
thing.
won.
They claim to have these measurements for each division, yet they contradict those measurements every fucking show, every fucking year. They
Mhm.
contradict themselves. And and like you said, there's so much personal preference. First and foremost, the two main judges, Sandy and Tyler Mannion, never competed in their lives. So we're taking critiques from people who've never even bodybuilded. What type of what professional eyes do they have towards muscle groups? They don't. They just look and see, I like that. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? They can't really pinpoint little details to help. You know, everyone kind of knows that when it comes to Sandy's critiques to women, it's much more focused on like the presentation side of things than it is details of their physique, their hair, their makeup, their suit, you know, their posing. She's not like, oh, you need more grain in your quad, your feathering in your quads, you know, she's
Yeah.
not going over those
She
details.
she also prefers a softer look in all divisions versus
Right.
harder. Versus like Steve, he wants a much harder look, whatever he looks at.
Yeah,
Like
and
any
I
division
think
he
for
judges.
Sandy, some of that, especially with women, I think that comes from her like somewhat acknowledging the enhancement aspect And it's like, I don't know exactly what this person is taking, but I don't like their look. It looks
Yep.
unhealthy. It looks too much. So she's turned off from it, but she doesn't know why. You know what I mean? She doesn't have that detailed knowledge of like, you took too many anabolics. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I
Yep.
think that that leads to bad constructive criticism from the judges, because I hate when a judge says you came in, too soft. It's a fucking bodybuilding competition. Like, what do you mean you came in too soft? How are you supposed to now say, okay, let me come in softer next time? That's not going to fare well either. It's kind of a lose lose. And I think sometimes judges give critiques just to give a critique rather than saying we liked other people more that day. Just being fully honest and just
Hmm.
saying, you looked great. We liked the other people better that day. You
Yeah.
know?
I can agree with that. Especially, I think it's harder at like the national and regional level. Well, regional level, not so much because, there's a lot of people that come in that just are not in shape, or
Yeah,
like
they're just not
they're in
ready.
shape, but they're just too small. That's pretty easy to pick out, but kind of national level, especially when we're getting up to like these shows like Universe and like that have like multiple bikini competitors, and just so much, and these judges are looking at them all day long. Anyone can go back and be like, well, I don't even remember this person, and so then that's why they have them send pictures in, because then it's like, oh, like looking at their picture here, they
That's
have a
right.
lot of people to rifle through. So like
Right.
for me on like the coaching end of it, I'm like, if my person didn't even get like first call outs or something, like I'm gonna be like, don't even bother. Like we know what to fix. Like if it wasn't even that close, like we know pretty much. Like you can, and anyone with a good enough eye can figure that out. And
Absolutely.
so I think that overloading the judges too, if you're like last call outs or something like that, like, you know,
If your last call outs, you had to fix everything.
yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
It's
not
not
to be
one
a dick
detail.
about it. Yeah, it's
Right.
Yeah.
it's it's a culmination of everything. And I think as a coach, it's equally as important to have a judge's eye
Yep.
objectively to your own clients and
Yeah.
not have that parasympathy of like, we've been working so hard. I think you look great. You kind of look like shit. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like
Right.
you have to be you got to be honest.
No, 100%. And I think that's a great point, Tyler. I think coaches also need to be honest with themselves. You see a client every single day, whether that's in person or on camera, from different angles. You probably are appreciating things that the judges didn't even get a chance to see. Maybe
Hmm.
your client fucked up a pose and they only
Yep.
have 2 seconds to do that pose. And the
Yep.
judge is judging what's in front of them. And if you fucked up your double bicep, well, I'm sorry. You didn't have quad lines. You didn't have this. You didn't have that. That's what I judged on. So
Yep.
sometimes it's in the moment that like something just got missed. But as the coach, you're like, they're the best, but like it got missed in that moment.
Certainly.
Yep. It's definitely hard as a coach to try to be unbiased for sure, because like we just grow to be like to like our clients and stuff like that too, but like I feel like we do a pretty good job about being like pretty like upfront about stuff. And like I've even lost a client for being honest and being like, hey, I don't think you're mentally ready to prep, and then another coach was like hyping her all up and all this stuff and was like, okay, well, this is what I want to hear, so this is what I'm going to go and do.
Of
And I was like,
course.
okay, have fun. She tried to prep and ended up pulling out anyway, so I was like, just being
Wow.
honest,
Yeah.
We have a pretty good balance because I kind of have a relatively autistic approach to it where I'm overly blunt. And I don't really know how to be any other way. Like it's an objective, it's subjective. So I have to speak to you in that manner.
Yeah.
Right. I don't care if we had coffee an hour beforehand. We're in the gym, we're doing our job. You're not my friend.
You're
We are a
paying me.
team and this is how we
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Right. Our jobs are to expose each other's greatness and cover down on each other's weakness. Well, my job is to say, hey, this sucks. We need to do better. Right. And your job is to not be emotional about it, but to also accept the reality and now perform to the task.
That's very much, the approach I always took. I don't do that many competitors anymore. I have a few, but the big days of my competition prep career are behind me. But looking back, I would say I almost leaned a little too hypercritical, where
Sure.
maybe I was actually somewhat detrimental to certain personalities. Different personalities work with different people, you know?
Yeah.
I was like, if you're coming to me to win, I am going to break you down just like a judge does. And I am going to critique every detail just like a judge does. And I'm going to strive for perfection. And a lot of people really appreciated that approach. Some people were called me negative because I was
Yep.
hyper fixating on the bad things, the weak points, you know?
And I think that's the benefit of being part of a team. You know, granted, there's two of us now, but obviously something we'd love to grow as time goes on. But there are certain clients that I know are not going to work well with Tyler.
Yeah.
So you're going to do those check-ins. Like they're
Yeah.
not going to want to hear
Yeah.
what I have to say. And because it's going to be mentally detrimental as well. You know, some people are just more sensitive to the way feedback is given to them.
100%.
And if I acknowledge the fact that I don't know how to do it any other way than the way that I do it, which is as I'm talking to you right now, that this is not good. We need to do better here. And that's that. Great job. See you next week.
Right.
Some people need the extra pat on the back. You're doing
Yep.
fine. You don't suck at everything, you know, so
Yep.
on and so forth. And she does a great job of that.
I honestly think getting more involved in functional health over the past 6 years softened my approach a little bit. I
Sure.
had to,
Yeah.
couldn't
You
be
have
Yeah.
so cold to menopausal women and stuff. So
He
yeah,
doesn't talk to those ladies.
yeah, I think that kind of forced me to get into this more place of like, well, okay, we're no longer striving for professional athlete. We're just striving for health and stuff like that. Different conversations. So taking a different approach to it. But still to this day, you know, if someone says that they want to go to the Olympia, they need a hard coach who's going to be honest with them, you
Certainly.
know, and
Mhm.
and even tell them that's not possible, just straight up, so
Yeah.
you don't destroy your health for the next 5 years in this failed attempt because you don't have the muscle bellies or the insertions or just the genetic predisposition for that to happen, you know?
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's a hard integrity line that a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but knowingly few of those out there don't have, where they're just willing to take the money and not shed the truth on the matter. Right. And that's, I mean, we live
It's
in a
hard
capitalist
because you don't want to
society.
come off negative.
Right.
You're just being
And we
honest.
exactly. And that's where your integrity as a coach and just a fucking good human being needs to exist. We're like,
Yeah,
no, I don't want you to push a bunch of gear and fuck your life up for something that's not.
totally.
Right? Like if you have super narrow clavicles and you're a dude and you want to go into open, like you're fucking okay, but no, like
Right.
maybe we try something else first and let's get our toes wet, but let's not go off the deep end right away and absolutely destroy you.
Yeah, let's appreciate this as a hobby, but not trick ourselves into thinking this is going to be my career that makes money, you know?
Right.
And not just health, but let's think about all the other things that can be destroyed in a prep. Families, marriages, you know, like so much can get destroyed in a bad prep. You're going to let all that go to the wayside for something that's not even possible. That is crazy.
Hmm.
And, you know, 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't be talking like this. I would
Sure.
have had that other idea of like, whatever it takes, you know, that Kai Green suffer mentality. But
Yep.
now that I'm older and I've been through it all, I'm like, wow, that's crazy that you're going to ruin your whole life over that.
Oh, very,
Mhm.
very much. I mean, it was the same thing as like me and strongman. You'll never make national as a natural athlete or being under 6'4" competing in super heavyweight. And my response was, "Fuck you. How about that one?"
Yeah.
And I paid the price for it, certainly.
Yeah.
But that was my mentality. Where now I've been a little further educated in my life, and instructed otherwise.
It's very rare that someone, especially fresh in a sport, is just going to take that type of blunt reality. You
Certainly.
know, they have to learn for themselves. But
Yeah, at some point you have to feel your own pain and use that as your acknowledgement. And that's what it is. I was a guy that needed to learn by blunt instrument.
yeah,
Yep.
me too.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. But we're better from it now. So
certainly.
Mhm.
that's what we can all say about our past.
Certainly.
Well, guys, this has been a great chat. I've really enjoyed conversing with you both. We are kind of coming towards an end. So before we finish up, I always want to make sure that everyone knows how to contact you guys. What are some different ways that they can get a hold of you in case they want to do in-person training or online training? Where can they find you and how can they get a hold of you guys?
The best bet's going to be through either her Instagram or our Valkyrie Fit coaching Instagram as well. I believe it's just Valkyrie Fit Coaching on Instagram.
Okay.
And my Instagram is just Kayla Forcier IFBB. So pretty easy to find. You can email us to Kayla at coachwithkayla or Tyler at coachwithkayla.com. And those are probably going to be the easiest ways. But yeah, we're located in North Dakota, if I didn't say that, by the way. So
Yep.
not a whole lot of people around here, but if you want to make the trip to North Dakota, like, cool.
Or
Yeah, I
bring
mean,
us up, get a
Yeah.
crew.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of people could benefit even from just like a one-time visit.
That's right.
If you guys could do a weekend training camp,
Yep.
Tyler showing them true failure. This is a wake-up call. You've never failed in your life. And what you typically think is max, you actually have 3 more reps in the tank.
Yep.
They can take that home with them and apply that new information to their current training regimen.
And
So
their life.
I think it would be super beneficial either way. So
Yeah.
guys, definitely go check them out. Hit them up if you have any questions or you're interested with coaching. I really appreciate you guys coming on today and doing this call. Do you guys have any finishing words for us?
Really thankful to be here, man. Thanks for having us on. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, likewise. You guys have a great day. We'll talk again soon.